We get very closely watched by the competition. Now, I'd closely watch us for an obvious reason. We're constantly changing, we're constantly trialling, we're constantly doing things. We certainly are still and remain in a market where I believe there are some leviathans of advertising. Now, Graham Poulter used that word 10 years ago. When he left Poulter's, he accused that organisation of being a leviathan of advertising. There are still people in this town who are leviathans of advertising. They are creative directors in wannabe organisations, and they sit out there and they're leviathans of advertising. The market has fundamentally changed. The practice is not working. The practice did not evolve. It is probably more preoccupied with nothing more than some affectionate love story with its past, which has got little or no bearing or relevance to a modern day client. So we don't particularly care what our competition think, because they do a good job for us right now by acting how they act. One or two of them that I think are probing a difference, I would absolutely welcome them to, certainly not going to be inspired by anything I've got to say, but if they see within it perhaps an excuse to trial something themselves, I would encourage them to do so, because as an industry we have a responsibility in these times to look closely at our act, change, evolve or die.
And you did say in a recent article in the Drum magazine that now is really the time to make changes, to maybe make a few gambles, because with the climate out there, now's the time to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, would you advise other agencies who really need to move on, need to move up to the next step, to make those kind of radical changes now?
I think in terms of other agencies using this time to make changes, I don't want to make a sweeping overview, because in any situation there are always agencies that will defy the odds and do well in spite of their product or service. I think the rest can be cut down into two groups. You're going to have smaller agencies who have been and will continue for a few months to report some kind of almost perverse growth in these times. Now, I know exactly where that's coming from. That's coming from the 10 clients that walk in here every week wanting to change the world for 50,000 quid, when actually they need £500,000. So we go, no, you're £450,000 short, and it would be grossly responsible of us to take that money from you, because it won't work. They go down the road, they go into a small agency, they see the money, they say yes, we can do it, before asking what one's doing, and they're trading. The client will always depart with that money in the direction of someone saying they can do something with it, because the client needs it to work. Their heart's ruling their head, they need it to work. So again, another aspect of our success, we've not brought in these flawed briefs, of which by default of clients wanting too much from too little, there's a plethora of small briefs feeding small agencies. I think those will just backfire and blow up very, very shortly. Then you've got the big agencies, and if you are a big agency currently claiming that you are not downwind or affected by the credit crunch, you're either a liar, or to a degree like us, you've evolved and made actions to alleviate that. So anybody with, I think, 50 plus staff right now is start scratching their heads. Now, traditionally when agencies scratch their heads, they know what they need to do, but their biggest threat in life is what the rest of the agencies think when 20, 30 people are going to let go. We know how the industry is. I think right now, if you want to get a bit of bad news out like the banks, now's the time to do it. So, if that means that the long-term preservation of your agency means to make changes and to fund them by dropping a few heads, then brutally speaking, that's the great business judgment to go and do that very thing. And I think the industry, whilst needing to report that news, needs to be perhaps more supportive of that move than it traditionally has been, because we all have an obligation for some of the good agencies to come through. So yes, I think it's the time to do things. This is not a time to be sat believing that this is a phase that will end. It will not end, it will metamorphosize, if you like, back into another place, but that place will not allow some of the crazy things that have been allowed to go on anymore. And my view will be, it will be a return to good, old-fashioned business. And Therefore, now is the time, I think, to go for it. And the energy that you need to find is not one of defeat or failure, that you're having to change your operating model. It's one of deep excitement and actually a challenge within everybody to go back to the very core of what we do and why we are here, which is creative people, creative thinkers, many of us being marketeers. We should be the best equipped people and management teams in all of the sectors to look, assess and evolve positively and come out of this with a far better proposition for the marketplace and primarily the client.